Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the December 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Planning Board to order. Mr. Henry, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Here.
Ms. Strang,
Here.
Ms. Belofsky,
Here.
Ms. Gomes,
Here.
Ms. Gold,
Present.
Mr. Millspa,
Here.
Mr. Billen Calhoun is excused and absent. Acting Chairman Khan.
Here. And on that note, again, we wish Mr. DiRapino the best and healthy recovery, and I'll be acting tonight. And whatever coaching and assistance can come from Laura, Clark, and Rob, and the rest of my colleagues in the planning board will be greatly appreciated. So please feel free to jump in if I miss or slip on something. First order of business is approve the minutes. However, we do not have any minutes before us tonight. We expect that we'll be able to take action on the November 18th and tonight, November 21st minutes at our next meeting, which is on December 16th. Okay. And first order of business is a public hearing concerning 1356 Balltown Road, an application for preliminary plot plan for a major subdivision of 14 single-family townhomes. Mr. Henry, can you please read the public hearing into the record?
Notice is hereby given that pursuant to the code of the town of Niskayuna, New York, and the applicable provisions of the town law of the state of New York, a public hearing will be held by the Planning Board and Zoning Commission of the town of Niskayuna in the town board meeting room at 1 Niskayuna Circle on the second day of December 2024 at 7 p.m. to consider an application from Victor A. Caponera, agent for BR Holdings LLC, for a major subdivision application for a 14-lot townhome development at 1356 Balltown Road in the town of Niskayuna. The properties are located within the R2 medium-density residential zoning district. A copy of the proposed zoning code amendments will be available for inspection at the Planning Department in the Niskayuna Town Hall and can be viewed on the town website under the Public Hearings tab and will be shown electronically during the public hearing. If you wish to express an opinion regarding the public hearing, you may do so at the above-mentioned time and place. If you cannot be present, you may request a virtual login to the meeting by emailing lrobertson@niskayuna.org or calling 518-386-4531. Or you may set forth your opinion in a letter which will be made part of the permanent record. Please note there is a 5-minute time limit for each speaker at the public hearing, and submitted letters will not be read out loud at the public hearing, but such letters will be included in the minutes and added to the record. The Planning Board and Zoning Commission of the town of Niskayuna will hear all persons interested during the aforementioned public hearing. By order of the Planning Board of the town of Niskayuna, New York, David DiRapino, Chairman, Planning Board and Zoning Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henry. And as is our practice, we'd like the applicant or representative to come up and give a brief overview of the presentation for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Victor A. Caponera Jr., attorney for the owner and applicant of the property, Niskayuna BR Holdings CO LLC. I don't want to say that I'm here a lot in front of this illustrious board, but I feel like running for office, which is something not to Laura. Anyway. So this is a process that's been going on for some years, and back in 2021, I appeared on behalf of my clients, and we presented a proposal for a 20 townhome subdivision on this property. There was another application that was submitted back in 2017. Some of you who may have been on the board may recall that was for a much broader and much more intense use, apartments, commercial, but regardless, for purposes of this application, it was 2021 that we started. And at that time, as I said, we applied for 20 conjoined townhomes. Townhomes are allowed in this zoning district. And we went through a very lengthy process, several months of appearing in front of this board. Mr. Khan, you were here at all those meetings and you're familiar. And during the process, there were a lot of modifications and changes that were made such that initially, we needed over 100 variances, area variances, due to the fact that although townhomes are allowed in this zone, there's no provision in our code, I should say that the town's code, that provides for conjoined townhomes. What does that mean? That means that if you have a zoning district like you have here, there's setbacks, side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks, area setbacks. But when you look at this proposal, well, the former proposal had the 20, basically you had 10 units that were conjoined. They couldn't meet the setback, and therefore you needed variances. Well, as the project progressed, we reduced the number of units from 20 to 18. The planning board recommended to the zoning board that we get the variances we needed. That went from 103 to 54. And we then appeared in front of the zoning board. The zoning board, at one meeting, decided not to grant us the variances. We appealed it, went to the Supreme Court of this county in Schenectady, and Judge Powers issued a decision in favor of us, ordering the zoning board to grant us all these variances. Before we got to argue in front of the Appellate Division, 3rd Department, in fact, just before, your town attorney, Ilana Finnan, and I got together with Laura and our engineers, Engels and Associates. By the way, this is Joe Hans that's with us tonight. And resolved this by further reducing the proposed 20 to 14 units. What did that do? Well, it made for a lot more green space, and more importantly, went from 54 variances down to 36 variances. For obvious reasons, we didn't need the area variances with far fewer townhomes. So we then, and oh, by the way, 14 of those 36 all had to do with the side yard setbacks for the conjoined units. So basically, we were looking at 22, what I call and consider de minimis variances vis-a-vis setbacks and area. So we went back in front of this board a few weeks ago, heard from this board, then went into the zoning board on the 20th of November. The zoning board granted us unanimously these proposed variances, came back in front of this board, who acted on seeker, and now we're here to have the board act on this proposal, hence the reason for this public hearing. And essentially, that's it in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone from the public to come up to the microphone. Please state your name and address and speak into the microphone so that your comments can be heard. Right. Again, another brief call for anyone currently in the town hall for the public comments on 1356 Balltown Road. All right, seeing no one in the room, Laura, is there anyone online, or would anyone online like to speak up concerning this public hearing concerning 1356 Balltown Road?
We only have an applicant online, so no one online. And then I just did want to note that we received one email from Mr. Trachtenberg concerned about the judge. Yep, concerned about the traffic, and that will be included in the minutes.
Okay, thanks. And I did see that, and hopefully the other board members saw that. All right, well, hearing no further public comment, we will close the public hearing, and we will move on with our agenda. At this time, we'd like to open the floor to members of the public to comment on any matters pertaining to planning and zoning in the town of Niskayuna. This is privilege of the floor, which is now open. Please again state your name and address and speak directly into the microphone. Anyone liking to speak at privilege of the floor?
Good evening, Matt Leon from the Niskayuna Central School District. Thank you for your time. Just wanted to provide the board with a very brief update on where we are in terms of the signage that we're proposing for our new administrative offices at 1430 Balltown Road. We appreciate your time from the last meeting, and the conversation was helpful in terms of going back and looking at the signage that we are proposing. And so we felt that kind of the balance or the thrust of the conversation was really around the facade sign facing Balltown Road. And what we did is we went back and we've reduced the size of the N logo. I think there was some comments about just the sheer size of that logo on the building. So we've reduced the size of the logo and we've paired it with some lettering that will say Niskayuna Central School District. We feel like that will be more appropriate for the building, for facing Balltown Road, for orienting visitors. My understanding is that by reducing the size and the proportionality with the lettering, that we may not need the variance for that, and we'll have some further refined drawings to submit to the planning department in the next couple of days. So we just wanted to provide the board with that update in terms of the Balltown Road facade sign. In terms of the monument sign, we're not proposing any changes. The feedback that we received on the monument signs that we put up at all of our schools this past August has been very positive, and this sign would really mirror those signs that you see at our schools. And we really feel like when we think about welcoming visitors, welcoming new employees, welcoming new families, we really want to kind of make it visible and orient them to where we are for that. Another positive piece of feedback that we received from those signs were from first responders, just in terms of how visible they were in terms of the location and especially the address. And so that's why we felt like it was important to kind of keep that familiar look and feel with the sign there. We also feel it's in keeping with the monument signs, standalone signs that some of the neighbors have. So again, just wanted to provide the board with that very brief update this evening. We appreciate the feedback and conversation at the last meeting, and look forward to working with you hopefully at the next meeting through this process. So thank you.
Okay, and just as a point of information, this topic will be discussed in our report section later on this evening, where I think what you've summarized we'll be discussing, and we can hopefully move forward with that.
So, thank you again.
Typically don't do it in privilege before, but I appreciate you speaking now. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
Any other speakers for privilege of the floor? Seeing none in the room. Laura, do we have anyone online? No. Okay. With no one in the room further or no one online, we'd like to close privilege of the floor. And let's move on in our agenda to unfinished business, which there is none tonight. And so we'll move into new business, which are two resolutions. The first being Resolution 2024-38, a resolution for site plan approval for a shed at 2 Commerce Park Drive. Ms. Gold is our lead on this, for which I'll ask for a motion in a minute. But as our practice, I will read the key portion of the resolution into the record. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Planning and Board and Zoning Commission has determined that the proposed 2 parking space waiver as described above and with the conditions outlined below would have minimum negative effect. And be it further resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission does hereby grant said waiver to allow for the shed as described in the aforementioned drawings. And be it further resolved that this Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds that the site plan application referenced above meets the requirements of the zoning code and previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves this site plan with the following conditions. 1, design. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall supply shed design information and pictorial images for a review and approval by the Architectural Review Board. 2, landscaping. Prior to closure of the building permit, the applicant shall supply a shed screening and/or landscaping plan for review and approval by the Tree Council or Planning Office. Do we have a motion on this resolution? Scope?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Seconded by Mr. Flom. Any discussions?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. I met with both Mr. Becker and, my apologies if I mispronounced the last name, Mr. Langone. And
Yep.
I knew there was a line of trees between this site and the adjacent apartments. That line of trees, even though they're deciduous, is pretty well filled in. They're tall. I don't think it's going to be an eyesore to the neighbors. And it is an industrial site in the first place. So I think it's totally appropriate. There are other places on site, but this actually is the most logical one because the employees who have to bring stuff back and forth will be out in the environment less, and in winter, that's a very important factor. So I think it adds to their safety.
Ms. Gold? Yep.
Just one comment on that feedback. Do we need the condition number 2 then, if the landscaping's adequate already?
My recommendation would be, I actually wasn't thinking about the screening to the Iroquois Village apartments because I agree with Ms. Gold. There's a lot of existing trees.
Yeah.
I was actually looking at that unplanted kind of buffer between the parking spaces so that it actually shields it from the Commerce Park Road. I am still recommending that we require some trees. I think that's good practice, but it's entirely up to you guys.
And I happen to be neutral on that topic.
Any comments on condition number 2? I think condition number 2 should remain in the resolution.
I can argue both ways because I think the lack of screening, if somebody falls, they're more apt to be seen. But
Yeah.
screening's nice.
Right, and a couple of things just to point out, right? This is a prior to the closure of the building permit, so I don't think it prevents the installation of the shed, et cetera. And also, at the end of the day, it's, having that additional bit of review and justification to the tree council or the planning board as to what it's going to be or not, I think is going to be useful. So I don't expect this to be a bureaucratic step or a very bureaucratic step. Other folks?
I agree with how it's written.
All right, seeing no further discussion from the board on this resolution, Mr. Henry, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Ms. Strang, Ms. Belofsky,
Aye.
Ms. Gomes, Ms. Gold,
Aye.
Mr. Millspaw,
Aye.
Acting Chairman Khan.
Aye. The resolution has passed.
Excuse me, was there a second on that? I know that Leslie.
The second was Mr.
Chris.
Gold.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. And now we move on to our second resolution, Resolution 2024-39, a resolution for lot line adjustment at 2428 and 2429 Heartland Street. There's no project leader on this, so I will make the motion to put this motion to move the resolution. Second by Ms. Strang. Thank you. And again, stating into the record the pertinent parts. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission does hereby grant final lot line adjustment approval for 2428 and 2429 Heartland Street as shown on the aforementioned one-page survey drawing with the following conditions. 1, prior to recording the plat, the final lot line adjustment map and recording documents, including the associated deeds and easements, shall be sent to the planning department for their review with approval by the town attorney. Any changes, additions, or deletions requested shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the planning department and before printing the Mylars. Discussion, and I think we have the applicant here. So discussion from anyone on the board. I think this is a straightforward lot line adjustment that leads to a better outcome than was there originally.
And I would agree with that. It's a very minor change. And if it's just the two neighbors involved, I don't see any reason for the town to have a problem with it.
All right. Any other discussion from members of the board?
Just
Laura?
Mr. Millspaw made the point last time that the easement does kind of change which property it's on. So that's included in the condition to make sure that easement is properly recorded on the new lot.
Thank you, yes. And thank you for that, Mr. Millspawn, for including it, Laura. All right, without further discussion, Mr. Henry, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme,
Aye.
Ms. Strang,
Aye.
Ms. Belowski,
Aye.
Ms. Gomes,
Aye.
Ms. Gold,
Aye.
Mr. Millspaw,
Aye.
Acting Chairman Khan.
Aye. All right, and so now we can move on to our discussion items. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Your resolution's passed, so congratulations on that, and you're aware of it and aware of the conditions. So, any questions or? All right, and you do have a copy of the resolution with the condition on it, right? Good, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, good luck. Thank you. All right. And so now we move on to discussion items, which is one topic only, 1356 Paultown Road, the preliminary plot plan. And I think there are a few points that we need to be discussing here. So again, Mr. DiArpino is the lead on this, but obviously he's not here tonight. And so the key thing for us to be discussing is what kind of conditions. So the outcome of this is we're going to be calling for a resolution for preliminary plot plan. The details of it is to discuss any kind of conditions that we'd like to put on that resolution, knowing the background and the summary that was heard in the public hearing presentation. So I'll open the floor to discussions. Laura, I think the only question I had was just what is the status of the TDE? How complete are we with the TDE's report, et cetera? And I think some of the board members have questions pertaining to some of those items.
The TDE has been working really hard to get us basically what we need for preliminary plat approval. We did refer to him some additional engineering questions that came in from the board today, and he recommends that we forward those on to the applicant's attorney. But I think kind of based on the agenda statement that we were working off last month, the conditions will probably just follow along those lines. The big ones that the TDE brought up at the last meeting, which, we have as outstanding items, are the stub road, which I have a meeting with WRGB, so hopefully we can have more information on that soon. The drainage, so the way that the water moves towards CVS and through CVS, that remains to be a big thing that we have to work on. The wetlands, we need that updated letter from the Army Corps of Engineers. And
Regarding the stub road, my concerns are both emergency egress or access, as the case may be, and that garbage trucks on that private road have a suitable place to turn around if they can't go through.
yes, and we need a profile of the road
Yes.
and to work on that retaining wall that's behind the home.
Laura, just please. No,
I was just going to say, I guess procedurally, we don't truly have a preliminary plat yet. So I guess one question maybe for the attorney at the end, do we need to hold the public hearing again at the next meeting since the preliminary plat has not yet truly been submitted?
We have enough of a plan, so substantial. If there were going to be some significant revision of what we've been presented with and what we've submitted to the town as part of the public notice, then that would be a concern. But given the fact that most of the layout is in place and what we're talking about is drainage, that sort of thing, I get that the turnaround is a significant item, but I don't feel that that rises to the level of requiring a whole new separate hearing, public hearing.
Yeah, just procedurally wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
correct.
that was
Yes.
that was accurate. Then the only other main thing that I had based on the last meeting in this review. I know I made it clear from the feedback we had from the fire chief and the police chief with the road connection. And I know the applicant made it clear that losing two lots wasn't an option, but I think there's still some considerations with those 2 lots. If the frontage question has been answered, with those being on a private road, I know that was one of the things the TDE raised. But I guess if a connection with WRGB is obtained, is there still a way to keep lots 7 and 8 and get rid of that connection, which will eliminate the cut-through traffic? And with the wetland report that was in the most recent submittal, there's a pretty decent drainage way through that portion of the property where this plan is proposing to enclose it in culverts versus keeping it open air. And in general, enclosing stormwater conveyance is not preferred just for the long-term maintenance and cost of it and et cetera. So I'm wondering if the applicant has looked into the feasibility of, if that gated access to WRGB is obtained, can that connection be eliminated, or what the rest of the board thinks about that, just from the feedback we have with the police chief, the cut-through traffic concern, and I guess my concern with the stormwater.
So maybe Laura can point specifically which access.
So I think, I wonder if I can draw on this. Andrew's just talking about if the WRGB connection goes through, do we really need this road pavement right here? It doesn't change the number of units. And it wouldn't allow for cut-through traffic.
Our request to WRUB, or the request, isn't for all traffic.
Right.
No.
Emergency traffic.
It's
Just
really, it is
Right.
limited. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Right.
What
We haven't really discussed the traffic calming options that the developer has. I think removing the pavement there could be a traffic calming option if that is their prerogative. But I think there are some other options too that they could consider for traffic calming.
Yeah, and Laura, just let me just make a comment here.
Might be easier.
Timeline and procedure wise, right? The matter before us tonight is a preliminary plot where we have some amount, I'll say a majority of the feedback from the TDE, but there's still some remaining work for the TDE to be done. You expect that we would get that before our next meeting on the 16th?
Yeah. So, and I think if I didn't put this in the agenda statement, David is unable to come to this meeting
Right.
tonight, but Cleric and I can work on the conditions with him and get them out to the board for consideration, prior to even our normal deadline, I think. My suggestion on the connectivity of the road would be to refer that to Complete Streets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But again, an item like the connectivity of the road and certain other engineering factors, they're not really for consideration on the preliminary, and anything to do with the preliminary plot resolution.
Well,
Right.
so my recommendation would be that the preliminary plat needs to stay as it's shown.
Mhm.
But if during review of traffic calming,
Yep.
Options, that is something that they find to be useful, then that's something that they could consider. But I think at this point, removing the road would substantially change the plat.
For the record, that's not an option that we're considering or would consider. Just saying.
I guess for the board's benefit, could you just walk us through the logic of the connection?
Be more specific.
So you have the driveway, the private road that goes from Balltown to Van Antwerp.
Yep.
If it's disconnected in the middle where the essentially the retaining wall, the culvert, that area that's being highlighted right there, and it doesn't affect the number of lots, I guess I'm just curious what the driver is to keep that.
You want to make it? Come on, you gotta come on up. Give your name.
If you could just come up and just state your name, please. Thanks.
Sure. Bob Miller. This is a plan we've been working on for a very long time, and quite frankly, we like the flexibility of that plan. We're willing to work with Complete Streets if that's where we get referred to try to work on traffic calming measures.
And when you say flexibility, what's the flexibility?
Well, obviously, more connections are better. That's the flexibility.
So you'd like people who are living on Balltown to be able to enter from Van Antwerp
Sure.
and get to the, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Absolutely.
The maintenance of the culverts will be the responsibility of the applicant.
Yeah, so I believe all of the stormwater infrastructure will be privately owned,
Mhm.
privately maintained with an easement from the town of Niskuna that if it's not maintained properly, we can go in and maintain it. That's standard for all of our proposals. I believe we would accept the water and the sewer lines.
Does privately owned mean an HOA?
Yeah.
Yes, I think they made that.
I thought it did, but
And would that be the same for the open space parcel off of Balltown that has culverts on it? That open space parcel is going to be dedicated to the town, right?
Well, this is what I was talking to you on the phone. They actually changed this a little bit, which makes it a lot easier. They changed the lot lines so that the stormwater is not on the open space anymore. So the
Right, but
open
the-
space that would be dedicated to the town doesn't have any drainage on it.
Well, it's got 3 culverts though. It's got the one 12-inch going on the CVS. It's got the one coming out from under the retaining wall, and it's got the other one going onto the CVS property. So there'll be 3 culverts that are on the town-owned open space parcel.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. so
Okay,
that-
yeah,
that
so
one-
Right, but the maintenance of those culverts and the town open space will be the town's responsibility.
yeah, the outfalls.
Yeah,
Joe Hines, Ingalls and Associates. We could adjust that lot line again to take that little sliver where you kind of see the property line zigs. We could take the existing culverts there and maybe put them on an open space, well, on the stormwater lot that you see there.
Yeah.
That might make more sense too, since we're looking at some additional screening by the retaining wall per the planning board's comments. So those would have to be maintained as well by the HOA.
Yeah, actually, good point, Andrew. Probably you should put the whole retaining wall on the private property. Town doesn't want to accept that. I'm sure. The highway department would kill us.
And did we get county referral comments back?
Yeah, the county referral just mentioned that they need a permit to do the curb cut on the county road, and otherwise they deferred.
Okay.
That's a 239 referral.
any other comments from,
Snow storage, is that all part of the WRGB conversation?
I'm not sure. I
Plowing that stub road, where will the snow go?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I think we would have to use some of the room on lot 7 there if you're applying to the north. Obviously, for the rest of the street, we could use some of that open space area or some of the area in the stormwater parcels for snow storage.
So typically on our maps, we would see like a little bubbled out area of where
Yeah.
you would put the snow.
Yep. Just to clarify too, we are in the process of reviewing the TDE comments that we've received. We anticipate having our responses to those and full detailed engineering plans by the middle of the week completed. So I think they'll answer some of these questions as well.
yeah, I mean, by way of moving this forward, right, if we're anticipating a resolution in the December 16th meeting, we'd like to at least have Mr. Giarpino and Planning Department, be able to have that TD report, review your response to it. I haven't heard yet. I don't know if anyone else has heard, but any specific conditions that we would identify today in this planning board meeting that would go on to that pending a review of it by the project lead, Mr. Giarpino. So I haven't heard anything that we've brought up here. What is the status of the discussion with WRGB?
We're just starting
Okay.
So there's going to be a meeting.
Friday.
So I reached out as well and spoke to I believe his name is Pete Hutchins. Is that who you spoke with?
Yeah.
Over there? Yeah. And he said that you had been in contact with him and the meeting has been set up. I asked for, obviously we want to be there in Ingalls. And so we'll be at that meeting as well.
11 a.m.
Friday.
And just to reiterate, the plan is for this to be some form of gated emergency entrance egress situation, right? Not,
So I think we would need to discuss that with WRGB and see what their needs are and what their wants are. I mean, if there's a way to make it sort of just a one-way exit for garbage trucks and things like that, I think
Right.
that would be even better.
Yeah.
But we have to see what they need. The primary thing is that you have to adjust the fire code.
Yeah.
And then if you don't adjust the fire code, then you have to figure out snow storage. Well,
Look-
if you can adjust the fire code, but it is, a normal gated emergency access, then we would need to look at where the snow storage would go and, how garbage trucks and things, how garbage pickup would work.
yep. So you anticipated my next question from what I asked that has to do with the garbage pickup. So if WRGB were to approve an emergency egress only, then we'd have a situation where garbage trucks are actually backing up.
Well, the way I see that is that stub that runs to the north acts more like a private driveway. And so the residents in those units would just bring the residential dumpsters down to the road that runs from Balltown to Van Antwerp. Therefore, a garbage truck doesn't have to go up that dead end. Yeah, the stub.
So
Wait, people would drag
Yeah.
their garbage cans all the way out to the main
Yes.
road?
I've lived in neighborhoods where that occurred. In Clifton Park, I lived in a neighborhood that had a bunch of private drives. And there were much longer distances. It's Fairway Woods, if anyone wants to look it up in Clifton Park. If you go to an aerial and you look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's all these private drives that go back, and that's how they handled it.
That's a long way to drag your trash.
And you do realize that there are people who find even just taking their trash to the end of the driveway is an effort.
Well,
Yeah, I see that, honestly, I see that as a marketing issue for us on a sale. That's part of the HOA. If that's where it lands and we're not able to get access through to WRGB for garbage, say, and this is where we land, that becomes for us a marketing issue on a sale.
Wow.
and I'm not actually sure about this or not because I had never noticed on Balltown Road, but it's possible that all the ones that are fronting, well, 2 out of the 3 buildings are fronting on Balltown Road, and they might be able to take their trash out down their sidewalk.
Yeah,
depending on where they put it.
we're really talking about 7 and 8.
Yeah, just 7 and 8.
is there trash pickup on Balltown Road?
I think so.
So if,
Yeah.
There is, and it's a nightmare because
Yeah.
it stops traffic. So I'm not sure that that's the best solution.
I'd rather have it picked up on
Yeah.
internal roads
Well, yeah, but
because it is a nightmare.
if single-family homes are allowed to have garbage pickup on Balltown Road,
Yes,
then
they are.
single-family homes are allowed to have garbage pickup on and 2 more houses isn't going to really change the traffic nightmare
yeah.
from the.
I guess
pickup.
if that were, sorry to interrupt, but if that were to be the plan, so they would, logically, it makes sense that the tenants could bring their trash to Balltown Road that are on Balltown Road. 7 and 8, I guess I want to see some designated area that they would be placing their trash on the cut through, to use the term incorrectly. But through that road, that HOA road, just something that notes that that's the destination for where the trash would be picked up. And that is much safer than a garbage truck backing up, on a path where kids are walking to school.
We can denote that on the plan. And I
Yeah.
think that, where we land on that obviously is going to depend on the conversations that we have with WRGB.
Yep, understood. Yep. But I'm just saying that if it doesn't work out as planned, then I think I would like to see something to make it clear.
In fact, one topic for discussion with WRGB is where does their garbage get picked up?
I'm sure they have dumpsters. Yeah, they would have.
Yeah, but where do we know where the dumpsters are for them?
Yeah, it's probably
I
think
think
they're in the
it's in the
back.
back.
They're in the back parking lot there. Probably
Yep.
not even that far from this place.
So a garbage truck would be pulling up the WRGB drive.
Yeah.
Laura, forgive me if we've discussed this before, but as a newer member, we're hinging a lot on the conversation with RGB. And my understanding was that they, up until this point, have not been particularly agreeable. So can you just indicate what's been requested
So
already?
I actually went back through my emails. I think maybe in 2017 they weren't as agreeable. In 2021, I had an email from them where I just mentioned what was happening, and they were actually willing to meet with me. And within that week, I think things just changed so quickly on that 2021 proposal that I never met with them. But I just followed that chain today to remind them of the conversation.
No formal requests since 2017 has been made of them in terms of,
2021.
we didn't, right, but you said that 2017 was the last time we actually asked them to do anything specific.
No, I asked them in
Oh,
2021.
you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the past, there's been a liability concern. Don't know what else, but I know liability was an issue.
Yeah. So I know that this is a very different process than we've ever done before, and I get it. But we actually are going to be pushing that issue onto the developer. Like what you guys are going to write is a condition that the road meets fire code. And in order to do that, they may have to get an easement from WRGB, or they may need to change it. We don't necessarily have the time to figure that out right now. We know that it'll have to meet fire code, and then we're kind of pushing that on them.
Yep. And so, Laura, thank you for taking a step to move us along. So definitely one condition as of this meeting, we will have to reiterate, as you said, the importance of that road as being meeting a fire requirement.
Mhm. That's the very first thing in the TDE's letter.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't think our condition will state how they're going to do that, but it must be done.
See, I would be a little more specific though and say
Yep.
that it has to be the connection to WRGV if we're going to make it as a condition, because it can't come back as a T or a cul-de-sac. I think that's going to be too much of a change, too much of a more asphalt, more. Well, I don't think it could fit with the variances that were granted. So I think it has to be a connection to WRGV.
I don't think that that's appropriate. A condition that we have to have a connection. We will meet, Joe, you correct me on that, we've discussed this today. We'll meet the fire code requirements,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
All right,
And how do you propose
So-
to do that?
Joe?
We're required to have 150 feet to any outer exterior wall of any structure. We're marginally off of that with, if you look out there from the main connector road with the lot 7. So there's a couple of different things you can do to get around that. One of the options would be to install sprinklers in just those units. That increases the distance to the fire road. It can go up to 450 feet. This is a discussion that would need to be had with the fire chief, though. So it's something that they're going to have to agree to. So should this plan not go through with WRGB, we'd have to have a follow-up conversation with the fire chief. I spoke with the fire chief, and I know, his first preference would be the WRGB connection, but that doesn't necessarily lock us out from
Yep.
pursuing other options.
I think that it's more appropriate to have the condition articulate meeting the fire code
Agreed.
rather than specifying how they should meet the fire code.
We're going to
think
do
that-
everything in our power to convince WRGB that this is a benefit to them also. It's a fire type situation where if you have this access, it benefits them. Should there be unavailability or blockage of their access points, likewise with ours.
Sure.
So, and I mean, it just kind of makes sense, not to mention the fact that they're draining all their drainage onto our property. We've shown that in previous photos.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
So
that sounds-
that's the biggest effort. I mean, it makes sense for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that sounds fine if there's a code compliant way that's acceptable to the fire chief, because he did point out, he's the one who made the point about the turnaround
Got
and being
it.
able to have the ladder truck turn. So, which was my understanding, the reason why having a pass-through option onto the
Is
WRGB
preferable.
property was an alternative to having a T or
Yeah.
a roundabout. So yeah, if there's an alternative with sprinklering or something that's still acceptable without having a turnaround, then to me, I think that sounds fine.
Okay.
Going back to the garbage issue, if the connection with WRGB doesn't go through, would you be willing to contact the 3 licensed haulers in town to make sure one or more of them would be able to pick up the garbage if it were brought out to Balltown? For those few units?
Or to Chris's point, they can show the area
Yeah.
where they would take the garbage cans to the internal road. Like you could make like a little landing
Yeah.
pad
We'll,
for 'em.
we'll show it on the revised plan.
Right, because we know from the school district's letter that the buses will not go in there,
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
So we won't be dealing with a bus and a garbage can, but we will have children likely walking
Maybe.
out to Balltown,
Never know.
probably.
But yeah, you have to anticipate that.
Do you have a target age group?
My age. No,
No.
we don't.
Yeah, so Victor, just so you understand, Rivers Ledge was like, we're not going to have any children. They didn't even put bathtubs in their apartments, which is horrifying to me because I have a child. They still have children everywhere with no
Yep.
bathtubs. in
You will
their
definitely have children.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
by the time they're 4 or
There's
5,
no
most
question.
kids don't want anything to do with
It's-
bathtubs
Yes,
anyway.
I agree, but it's an unusual choice.
Sure.
And yeah, they still have children all
Yeah.
over the place.
Realtors have been telling me for years not to worry about making a change in my house
Mm.
because
Okay.
the tub isn't the must-have that
Well,
it used to be.
Clearly not. Because my daughter is on the route for Rivers Ledge, and she said it's amazing how many kids get on the bus.
We have children in Rivers Ledge.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
yes.
All right, so just to summarize so far, so there's, I think, 2 key items that were mentioned. One will get handled by a designation on the drawing of a location where garbage from the properties on the stub road can be accumulated. Garbage cans can be accumulated. And I don't think we're going to require any kind of, shielding or housing for those like we would do for dumpsters, right? Just to be complete.
Well,
Yeah, because
You can
Right,
only
yeah,
put
it's
your
just
garbage out, what,
one night.
4 hours ahead?
yeah,
Yep. All
And
right.
You have to get the
So-
can as soon as possible.
That's clearly not a condition, but it's something we've all agreed to that should be shown in that plan that we're going to be approving when that resolution, for the next meeting.
and bubbled out snowstorm.
Right. And then the other one relative to a condition has to do with, I find it kind of odd saying it because by definition, a condition about meeting the fire code in a resolution, it's de facto, right? It doesn't require a condition. The plot plan will have to show that it's meeting the fire code, right? But I understand the nature of our discussion and where we'd like to go with this for the record. So there will be some kind of a condition or some assurance that the stub road and the properties on it are compliant with our fire code.
Correct. Just to add on to that, though, those are conditions that kind of were highlighted by the chairman
Mhm.
at the last meeting. But there'll be standard conditions that we have in all preliminary
Right.
approvals about the water and the sewer.
Yep. And the engineering.
The on-site roads, like there'll have to be conditions about the on-site roads being privately maintained by the HOA, the multi-use path easement, that'll be a condition, the building facade being referred to the ARB, the open space going to the town, the limits of clearing and the tree planting plan going to the tree council.
Right.
Those are all our like normal standard ones. The ones that we were just focusing on at the last meeting and kind of now are the fire code, the stormwater, and
Yep.
just a couple of those.
And then Lord, just clarify for me, the
Traffic calming.
traffic calming. So how does that, is that determined by the developer, what's necessary?
Yeah, so typically what we would do, well, this is an atypical situation, but typically what we would do is say that, we recognize that traffic calming is needed for this road because it goes between Balltown and Van Antwerp, and we already actually have an issue with the traffic going through CVS. So we would recognize that issue and refer to the developer to work with Complete Streets on traffic calming proposals. It is a private road though, so I think it would be okay if they ran things past the Complete Streets. I mean, they have the ability to do things that we are not able to do on our own town roads. So
But they're not required to do anything for traffic calming.
they are not. It would be, to their benefit to have traffic calming. And I think to the police chief's comment, if they don't put traffic calming, even though it's a private road, he's concerned that residents would still come to the town and be like, why are you letting them cut through my development? Which
I mean,
is very
talking to
likely.
people, there's some people who are very happy to hear that there's going to be an alternative way to connect between those two streets. But if you've ever been in CVS parking lot when someone's trying to cut through, it's
Dangerous.
my concern is just, the speed with which people would try to do it.
I think so for one, you're not actually allowed, public is not allowed to drive on private roads. They can do a lot with that.
Signage.
Yeah.
That just becomes an
Multi-
enforcement issue, though. I mean, just having a sign up isn't going to keep
I
people
agree.
from cutting through.
No, I agree. But
Uh,
these roads can have, these roads could have, sort of entrance pillars that don't even make it look necessarily like a road.
Yeah, but as
They
soon
would
as people
try-
know it's there, they're going to use it because there's less traffic. It's one, it's a direct route versus dealing with in and out cars at CVS. So I guess my question is, a condition can be that we ask them to work with Complete Streets, but we do not have the ability in our conditions to indicate a best practice for mitigation, given that it's a private road.
Yeah, so Complete Streets has a list of suggested traffic calming measures that they've been working on for some time. They include traffic tables, raised crosswalks, chicanes, little mini roundabouts. They have a list of standard traffic calming treatments that we could refer to and require that some traffic calming be installed. But I think at this point, we wouldn't be able to hone in on exactly what the traffic calming measures will be. And I think that they should have the flexibility because traffic calming is kind of a situational type thing to figure out what works and doesn't work and implement it, going forward. Because they actually have the most at stake to keep the cars from going through their property.
I would think that if I was purchasing one of those units through that cut through, that I would want something there. I mean, we're naive if we think children aren't going to be there, right? But living on a major route myself and having cars zoom by all the time, if there's a possibility that they could cut down on that, I think that would be optimum for those residents. You don't want people running past your.
Oh, they don't want that. No, I think with the exception of chicanes, because this right of way is not big enough for chicanes, you could practically add all of the treatments.
Yeah.
I don't think chicanes make much sense in our climate.
Well, the plow guys don't like them, but they definitely interrupt the
Yeah.
visual corridor.
But the drivers don't like them either because they're dangerous.
Well, they slow the drivers down.
I just like to make a comment on, so we've dealt with all kinds of cut throughs in the past,
Mhm.
right? And I do want to propose to the board, when you zoom out a little bit on this one, that, this one, yes, I agree that people always use a cut through whenever it's connected. However, this one is actually in the middle of a triangle that's a pretty well established with good free flowing traffic, right? The corner of Balltown and not in Van Antwerp and then Van Antwerp and Balltown, right? So I'm a little, I didn't think about it extensively, but I'm a little hard pressed to see that there's any specific advantage to anyone cutting through in either direction. There's probably a little bit more of an advantage coming off of Balltown to get over to Van Antwerp, but it would really be someone who might have just been coming from Barcelona to begin with, right? Because if a person's coming one way in Balltown north, they're going to go in Van Antwerp. And if they're coming south, they would have turned on that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see a lot of people using it. I mean, parents park in the CVS parking lot and wait for kids to leave Van Antwerp. That's a very common pickup spot after school. And so I could absolutely see this becoming part of that process for a huge swath of the population, actually. As someone who's on that road in that area,
Yep.
I do think it's going to be used significantly. That's why I raised the question.
So I'm just going to,
I mean, they can put a gate up with a swiping pass. It's a private road. They
Yeah.
can definitely make sure that cars
Yeah.
do not use this road.
I guess I'm thinking that, yeah, it's all fair game. And if they decide they need to calm the traffic because it's significant or out of line in comparison to the other area roads in that area that these folks chose to live in, then they could decide to do that. I kind of just, yeah, I'd love to cut down the cut throughs, but every one of our streets is, every one of them. You know, so, and this does have some natural calming to it. You can't see around the bend until you get around the bend. And then the straightaway is really Balltown Road. For some reason, I'm feeling confident that this will be a cut through. It'll be minimal. And if it's not manageable, they'll do something to improve that. And is it really our jurisdiction to, if it's a private road, do we have much influence on this now?
Well, the town code encourages private roads to be built to town standards, because there is the possibility that this could become a town road in the future.
At some point, yeah.
It'd be hard though, because the right of way is basically on the edge of the pavement, but
Is it even standard though? Are the widths?
the width,
No.
the
The
width is
the width
standard,
is
the right of way
standard,
is not.
The right
Yep,
of way is
yeah.
not,
Yeah.
yeah.
But they have to be able to run fire trucks and such. So
I mean, they're
they're real
building.
roads.
Oh yeah, they're building a road to town standards. Just that we're not.
Right.
There's really no difference at this point between a private road standards and the town road standards because they all have to carry the super heavy fire truck.
Right. So recognizing everything that the board members said and the fact that, you know, at the end of the day, at best, us or Complete Streets can make recommendations about calming to the owner. I guess, Laura, I'll leave that for the discussion. You know, the planning department will have it, Mr. Arpino. If something makes it by way of a condition into the resolution, then I'd hope it'd be something that, you know, that the applicant will be able to comply with.
Yeah, and if the applicant knows what traffic calming they want to do, they can add it into.
Yep.
There. But they may not because it may be a longer discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
But the important thing is, I think, you know, unlike the first discussion that we had that Mr. Millspaw brought up and the applicant commented on, the layout of the roads, the layout of the main road. Right, we talked about the stub road already. The layout of the main road is as is
Mm-hmm.
for this plot plan.
And there's
Okay.
also a multi-use path to keep the pedestrians safer on this cut through, or this pathway. But out of curiosity, I can't tell by the diagram, what is the distance between the road itself and the multi-use path?
Well, I think it varies a little. Joseph can answer. Here it looks like it's basically probably just curbed. And then here it
Mhm.
has a bit of a grass strip.
Yeah, we put where we could, we put a couple foot offset from the edge of pavement to the multi-use path. Mostly
It's not continuous.
no. And
Is there a grade differential here on this one? If there isn't, you're going to have to do some kind of a line or way of delineating it from the road there.
we can take a look at that. Yeah, I'll just see what our detail shows.
But most of the time, it's got this buffer.
And Laura, where the path sort of hugs the open space designation, that path is still maintained by the HOA?
Yeah, so we wanted to have it be a public access easement, and the town will maintain the sidewalk on Van Antwerp Road, but the highway department did want the underlying landowner to maintain the path.
By maintain, that means like maintaining access, so like snow removal.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And also, you pave it every, like, I don't know, 15 years, 20
Yep.
years.
Okay.
Okay. Any other items?
Well, Acting Chairman Khan, you had asked about the TDE, so I just wanted to take a minute to kind of summarize that.
Yes, please.
We asked the TDE to be present at the meeting this evening, but they had a scheduling conflict. Otherwise, they would be here. So Laura and I have been speaking with them regularly. They've issued their first comment letter, and as was mentioned earlier this evening, the applicant is in the process of responding to that. Andrew had a couple comments, And those have been also forwarded to the TDE, and he will be responding to those early next week. So if we can get the revised information from the applicant's engineer, he had said mid this week, hopefully we will push the TDE to respond to all of that by early next week and provide it to you.
Thank you.
At the last meeting, we talked about working with the TDE to make sure we had agreements in principle on some of the major aspects of this design. You know, the road with the fire connection. I believe one was the retaining wall. They're outlined in the agenda statement. Those were addressed in the TDE's first comment letter. So I think with further detailed response from the applicant's engineer and the TDE looking at them again, those will form the foundation for any that are not answered in full will be part of the condition that you could consider for the resolution. So that's kind of the way we see the TDE interaction going forward.
Yep. Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Henry. Was that?
And we will have our standard condition that all TDE comments have to be satisfactory prior to a pre-construction meeting. So essentially, the developer has to get a letter from the TDE that states that all of the engineering concerns have been addressed.
Okay.
Which we don't usually actually have for final
Right.
subdivision, but we always have before pre-construction meeting.
Okay. So that being said, still open to any final comments, but I'd like to propose that we call for a resolution at our December 16th meeting concerning the approval of this preliminary plot plan. And with the expectation that, to whatever level of complete documents from the TD, from responses, and whatever spills over as conditions goes into conditions on that resolution. Sounds reasonable to the board?
Yes.
All right. I don't think we vote on this, right?
No.
Yeah, okay.
I guess just one other discussion item in the packet, the new information was a tree clearing plan. I guess the engineer, would he be able to just walk us through quick? I mean, it looks like, are you planning to clear cut the lot within the red dashed line? Because it is called out as tree clearing limits. And then
Yeah, you can see the red line there is the limits of disturbance. So that area there is going to be cut. Any of the area within the open space that's not within the red line is going to be preserved. And if you look along Balltown Road, we also indicated, and I think this is on earlier versions of the plan as well, there's some large street trees through there. Those will all be maintained, even though they're within the limits of disturbance. So we're going to work around those.
Yeah, and I thought you mentioned at either the last meeting or meeting before about doing a tree survey. Did you go out and do the marking the trees greater than 5 inches for consideration for being kept, and how those?
We have it partially completed. We're working on wrapping that up, so we can provide that in a subsequent submission with the updated plans.
Okay, yeah, and I guess just for the applicant's benefit, the couple comments that I had that I sent to Laura that she sent to the TDE on the grading plan, having the existing contours on there so we can get some context on the cut fill that's going on there, or if you know off the top of your head now, are we looking at like
we'll have a
1 foot
cut
of grade
fill report.
adjustment, or
Right.
is there like 4 feet, 5 feet?
Yeah,
in
well,
some places?
it'll be a lot more clear too, because I think someone brought up that we need profiles, so you'll have the full profiles and the
Yeah.
plan set. We can give you a cut fill analysis on that too.
Yep, and then the last thing, maybe so you can get a jump on it or a head start on it. In the wetland report, it noted, saturated conditions, top 12 inches, groundwater 10 inches, but the test pits on the grading plan showed dry conditions down to 40 inches or deeper. So just my question to the TDE or to you was, what time of year the test pits were done to confirm you were getting the seasonal high water table? Because you're accounting for a lot of storage in that dry pond area, but if it looks like you're taking that down a foot, and if that's going to be saturated 8 months out of the year, you might be overestimating the stormwater capacity in that area.
Yeah, I know the test pits were performed recently, the current ones that you saw, obviously, and it's obviously been dry.
Right. So if
I'd
they're
have
in
to look.
drought,
yeah.
So if they're in drought conditions, then like the bioretention and the dry swale all need under drains, which need 2 feet of separation from groundwater.
Well, I think with the bioretention area and the dry soils, those can be installed with an impermeable barrier per the new stormwater design manual. So you don't necessarily need the clearance to groundwater, but we can take a look at that. And we'll have details for all the stormwater designs in the field plan set.
Yeah, and the last part of that was, it didn't look like any runoff reduction was considered in the SWIP, which might decrease the size of those if you do try to take some runoff reduction credits from filter strips and disconnected rooftops, because it looks like you don't have any storm sewers, any curbs, so everything's going to be sheet flowing off of your roadways. So if there's grass vegetated strips off the side, you can probably disconnect those from all your impervious calcs and not have as much dry soil and bioretention.
Yeah, we can
Just for
certainly take a look at that.
consideration. Because those really aren't usable green spaces. You know, they're stormwater features that just sit there and
Yep.
have a high maintenance burden for everyone. So just for consideration.
Yeah, we want to keep it as simple as possible. So
Yeah.
we'll make sure we consider everything in the design.
All right.
Yeah, and just for the applicant, because I was talking about this with Andrew earlier, the tree council does do like a site walkthrough along the limits of clearing, and they will flag trees if they're near the limits of clearing to try and be saved. I can tell you right now, when you clear this, it's going to be epic because you're going to be able to see from Balltown to Van Antwerp, and the noise is going to change, and we're going to get a lot of calls. So if there's any way to save trees inside of there, that's going to be a big deal.
Inside the stormwater retention.
No, inside
Yeah.
the limits of clearing.
Inside
I know you
the-
can't do a lot of it
Even
because
within the limits.
of the roads and the stormwater and all that stuff. It's mostly on the edges, but anywhere that there's an edge that can be saved, we should save it.
Yeah, there's a lot of big white pines you can see in the open space area to the east. So all of those will be saved as part of the application. I mean, we can take a second look at maybe some of the trees along Van Antwerp, but it's going to be difficult with the grading involved with the development. So
Yeah, to Andrew's point, if you're doing the 5-inch survey, that'll be helpful. I actually don't think there's very many big trees along Van Antwerp. There are some really big trees. Even I know you've got the silver maples saved, which is really important. There's some really big oak trees, I think, in the backyards, which I'm doubtful that they could be saved, but you should look at that. I'm actually talking like more along the edge with WRGB in places where you can keep some of, if there's a big tree along that boundary, you should really look at, I mean, the tree council will walk it with you anyway, but just keep in mind that anything that you can keep in there is beneficial.
okay, yeah.
All right. I think we can move on to next agenda item.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Our next agenda item is reports. And if you'd like, you can come to the podium. I know it's a section where we, it's not a discussion item, but I think, Laura, if the board is okay with this, we can resolve this. So,
You're the
Laura, I
chairman.
think you're leading here. Yep.
You have all powers.
Well, I mean, the board agrees, so I think we must want to be expedient. So, so Laura, I think you're leading this discussion on the reports, right? concerning
Yeah,
the
so
signs?
I just wanted to bring to you guys' attention the changes to the sign. Matt's email was included. Talking to the monument. We are not able, because one, it came in too late to fully put it in the packet, but two, it also doesn't have the dimensions yet.
Yeah.
So Clark and I are not able to fully figure out whether or not it needs a waiver. We still need those dimensions from the school. We will have that information for the next meeting. I could tell you though, kind of no matter what, it was a reduction of the logo. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And so if you remember, sir, that the issue with the logo in itself was that it was always going to be non-compliant because it was 100% of the sign. So what you've done here, I think, is going in the right direction. I'm going to strongly recommend when you work with the planning department. So we're looking at that as one entire sign. So let's just get it to be code compliant.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
This is, if you look back at any of our meetings, this is probably the most consistent thing that we do where signs are concerned. I think you have a lot of opportunity, right, to be able to do that now. The logo is no longer, 100% of the sign, and the words tell it. So I think if this one gets to be compliant, we should be good. And the next topic is the monument sign,
Yeah.
right?
And you just have the monument
Yeah.
sign outstanding. Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
And look, personally, I know I'd made a comment before. We're opening back up to the board when we see that sign. If I could be a little bit more neutral to the middle relative to a consistency with what's in all the current schools. But
Clark, did-
for me, the important thing with the monument sign is it should clearly indicate to drivers on Balltown Road where they need to turn and go.
Yeah, Clark did an analysis of the adjacent monument signs in the agenda statement, which we didn't include because it didn't
Yep.
come in time. But we do have those
You have
measurements.
that next-
It's pretty similar, right, Clark?
Yes, yeah, so you'll have that at the next meeting. We analyzed the lot sizes and the existing monument signs for Body Works, Ace Hardware, and KinderCare.
Okay. So based on your recommendation, Laura and Clark, can we lean towards having a resolution in the next meeting with the anticipation that we can table it if, there's something, that we see is just out of whack with what we would expect? Is that reasonable for the board? Or,
I think that would be consistent with neighboring properties.
That's our recommendation. One other thing we considered is that in the past, we have kind of not been that excited about facade signs. They weren't in compliance with code, but really focused on the monument sign being the place that takes the cars off of Balltown Road because we don't want the eyes to go so far up to the building to
Right.
figure out where they're going. So I also think that, to make sure that people are seeing exactly where they need to turn and not be looking all over the place.
yep, absolutely. And if there's some addition or clarification you can have on the monument sign, it would help. And that's why I'm saying that on this sign, you got past, one of the compliance issues, but it doesn't need to be a huge sign.
Okay.
But I do think, right, WRGB and ACE, they do have something on their building as well, facing
Yeah.
Balltown.
They're allowed.
Yeah.
What I was thinking of is the medical office on Balltown Road. We didn't want them to have a facade sign because we wanted them to use the monument sign for
Right.
wayfinding. These guys are allowed to have a facade sign. That's fine. But I actually think that we still really should be focusing on the monument sign being what is directing traffic.
Directional.
Yes.
And then the facade sign, because it's allowed, can be its own thing. They're allowed. But
But we do have coverage standards on that
on the
facade sign.
right, and what Jengis is saying is make sure it's compliant.
Yep, just make sure it's compliant.
Okay, thank you. I do think when we took a look at the dimensions and making sure it was compliant, it will appear smaller than what you see there. And you'll see that when it
Yep.
comes back.
That's
next time.
encouraging.
Clark will tell us, and like I said, it's it's usually a good thing to do to just get to be compliant.
Okay, great.
Laura, this might be beyond this applicant, but maybe just in general with the signs on Balltown and in this district. But the code says that monument signs are not supposed to be for single businesses, but obviously ACE has one, the nursery has one. I guess, do you know was the intent to have more of a monument sign that has like each individual business's name
Like
on it?
ShopRite.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and also
Or-
like the medical offices on Balltown Road have that
Yep.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, so is there, I guess, a decision down the road to like make this driveway entrance have like a monument sign that displays all of them? Or are we just gonna keep going down the path of each individual business having one, even though the code says not to?
Well, this driveway is split and shared with KinderCare and the Niskayuna Schools office. Ace Hardware does not actually have the right to use
Yep.
this driveway.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why Ace's says entrance, the formal entrance to Ace Hardware is off of
On
Knott
Knott
Street.
Right.
East.
So theoretically in the future you could possibly combine KinderCare. I mean the KinderCare sign is getting really
Yeah.
old.
It's a good idea.
But I think it is hard because it's not even an easement. Like the property line actually goes right down the road. So they all have these individual properties,
Right.
which I think is possibly why the monument sign started to pop up in that area to begin with, because the roads are so weird to get to the buildings there that I think that's why they got their monument sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for this instance, it's like the facade sign is so visible from Balltown
Mhm.
that it's almost like redundant to have both signs.
Yeah, well, I think I'm not even sure you necessarily notice the KinderCare
Yeah.
sign.
Right.
But then the only issue with combining the signs is then the school brand won't look the same.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I have no issue with the school sign, the way it looks and the consistency, just from, the way our code's written.
Well-
Do we need more of a hardship justification from the applicant to support the waiver?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah, we
wouldn't-
talked about that once before.
You wouldn't want it to look like KinderCare is part of the school district. That would be a legal issue for everybody.
But
I don't
maybe
think it would look aesthetically nice anyway. I think it would look very strange.
to have
Yeah, and
them-
I'm not suggesting to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
It's
do
not a
that. I was just
plaza.
more
Mhm.
for the way the code's written, and when we do the resolution for the approval, we need to articulate more why the monument sign's being.
should be its own standalone and not combined. Okay.
I would just add to that making, I guess, ensuring that brands are separate probably isn't in our jurisdiction because we didn't do that when we were looking at Union. And we were concerned about Albany Med and Capital Cardiology looking like one brand.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope and jumping into that.
But that is a multi-tenant structure.
Right.
This is not a multi-tenant structure. In fact, it's not a strip mall either.
It's a
I think we need multiple
multi-tenant
monument signs
Yeah.
to reflect the structures.
I don't know exactly what was in 1430 before, but it may have been multiple tenants. I know there was
It was
definitely a law.
law
It was a law office, right?
I don't know if the entire building was a law office or had.
But for whatever it's worth, I just want to reiterate, Laura, I think the strongest argument, and that's a
It
good
was-
recommendation, that, you know, that you made, Andrew, but I think if the property line truly is down that driveway, that
It
roadway,
is. Yeah.
then at the end of the day, the basis for a monument sign becomes diminished, right? Because it's two separate properties on either side of that drive.
Yeah, this was
And Ace
last
is not
law office, and the law office got moved to Erie Boulevard.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I closed on my house in this law office,
Yep.
but I didn't know.
All
if there
right.
was
So
more.
we'll call for a resolution. Hopefully we can get a compliant sign and we will have a, you know, a monument sign that makes sense for the area that it's in and for the guidance that it needs to give to drivers in Balltown.
Excellent.
I mean, at
Thank
the end of the day, you're going to have board meetings in this office,
Yes,
right?
that's
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks for that, folks. So commission business, moving on the agenda. Anyone have any items? Commission business? All right, seeing nothing, we can keep going. So we're at the point where we can make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Gold. Seconded by Ms. Strang. Thank you very much. Folks, thanks for making this easy. I don't know what, I do have tremendous amount more respect for the chairman's
All in
position.
favor? All in favor?
Oh, that's right. There you go. Thanks for the coaching. All in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you all for making this easy, and I still have a lot more respect for the chairman's position. Thank you.
Jengas, you did a great job.
You did.